Well, obviously with running backs, it's, we got to see how it plays out. But receivers, let's get into receivers real quick. Nico Collins, another name where people can't kind of get this value. We see sometimes he's in the first round, sometimes he's in the top of the second round right now. Elite receiver, and I think he showed that. Obviously got hurt last year. Had Stephon Diggs to kind of deal with at the beginning of the year. He was playing at an incredible rate, even with Diggs, and then came back to a tank list. Tank Dell was injured, and obviously he'll be out again in 2025. And Stephon Diggs was out for the year as well. Now you enter Christian Kirk, who was traded to the Texans this offseason. You also enter Jalen Noel, also enter Jaden Higgins. So there will be some competition for targets, not to mention Joe Mixon is a big part of this offense as well. I don't know. I like Nico Collins, the receiver. I don't know that I have him as like this top 5 to 7 receiver. I think there's some other guys I like ahead of him. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, have a little bit more upside. Even a guy like A.J. Brown has a little bit higher ceiling to me than Nico Collins, who, I'm going to be honest, the one thing about Nico Collins that we don't really talk about and that he dealt with last year is that he has had a knack to being kind of injury prone over the first few seasons. And he played one complete year his entire career so far, which has been short. But I think that Nico, when he plays, is going to be elite. I have my concerns about him ceiling-wise as opposed to some of the other receivers in that same category.
I agree somewhat. There's a couple of guys that, I don't mind taking the stab at Malik Neighbors, like Puka Nacua, but I think he definitely fits in that range, in that tier where we saw it last year. I don't know exactly what he was before. I want to say he was either wide receiver 1 or 2 before he got hurt. I believe it was against Buffalo. So he was wide receiver 1 or 2. So we just know, like, the upside with Nico Collins is there. Like, this dude is a very good real life wide receiver. He's a big play threat. He doesn't go down after first contact. Like, he's able to do things after the catch. And then you basically get rid of Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs, and now you replace them with Christian Kirk, who's coming off a broken, I think it was leg or ankle or something last year. I don't remember exactly. And then you also have, like you said, the 2 rookies. They're still rookies. Like,
Yep.
in this, the one thing that I think a lot of people kind of are overestimating a little bit with these rookies. This was a bad wide receiver class.
That was the consensus.
A bad one. And Jalen Noel and Higgins were like guys who were 5, 6, 7, 8 in this wide receiver class. So, like, I just think some people kind of overthink this a little bit. Like, with these wide receivers, these guys probably won't make a big impact year 1. Maybe one of them does because there's just nobody else there. But I think, like, Nico Collins should see a bunch of volume. He's a very good wide receiver. We know that C.J. Stroud, at least rookie season, C.J. Stroud showed us he's a very good quarterback. I just think the offensive line was an issue. He didn't play as well last year as well, but, like, then Nico Collins got hurt. So I love Nico Collins. I think he's fantastic. Sure, he's kind of in that range. I would rather have him over A.J. Brown, just because I think A.J. Brown's capped a little bit with the ceiling with Jalen Hurts and, like, Saquon Barkley there. Like, they're not going to have as many passing touchdowns, where the volume can be there in Houston for Nico Collins to have a big year with C.J. Stroud.
I mean, it's set up for him, if I'm being honest. Like, it's set up for him to have a strong season. And if he did, I guess I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know that I want to use my first-round pick on somebody that I think can't be a top 3 receiver. And that's where I think, like, if I'm going to go Brian Thomas, I'm going to go Malik Neighbors. If I'm going to go some of these other players, I want the top 3 upside. I think that's what Nico is lacking. Even on a week-to-week basis, we've seen it with him before. Like, we've seen him be a top 3 guy. I think at one point last year, he was the number 1 receiver up until Jamar Chase had his mega game and he got hurt. I think Nico Collins was the number 1 receiver. So for me, I like Nico Collins. And like I said, I have some concerns ceiling-wise. He kind of fits in like that Puka range for me. Like, him and Puka are interchangeable as far as rankings for me, because I think that they both have really nice floors and just semi-limited ceilings compared to maybe some of the other receivers going right around them. That would be my only thing. What about Ladd McConkey? And the people who are watching right now, they know I've been kind of a Ladd hater, so to speak. Like, he came in last year and was like wide receiver 3 territory, paired up with Justin Herbert. And obviously they got him the ball in a major way last year. Team got, obviously when the draft got Trey Harris, and I don't really think that was a crazy addition. Signed Mike Williams this offseason. So, I mean, really it's run it back season for Lad McConkey is what it feels like. But it also feels like this team went and got Najee Harris, drafted Amarian Hampton. Like they're going to try to focus on the ground game, which in turn should open things up for the passing game. But it feels like a re-emphasis on the ground game is going to be there. And also, we talk about Lad, like, I don't know that the touchdowns will be there. He was kind of carried by 7 touchdowns last year, and I think touchdowns are one of those things that seems like it's very consistent until it's not. You got to take Lad McConkey in the top 12 receivers right now. Are you taking him in the top 12?
Absolutely. Like once like AJ Brown's off the board, and I would even argue he's there with AJ Brown. Like it's Lad McConkey. Like I think Lad gets a lot of unnecessary hate. And I will say last year I was very skeptical with Lad just because of the college production that he had.
Yeah, he had like nothing.
Yeah, there wasn't much there. But the one thing with Lad that I think people forget, he just finishes a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy football as a rookie. Like as a rookie wide receiver. Like these guys that do that, they typically only get better. Like we don't really see these guys get worse. And the other thing is that a lot of people, we look at where Malik Neighbors is going, which, Malik Neighbors in terms of talent is on par, potentially on par with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase next year. If he has a blow up year, like we could put him on that level. Same with maybe even Brian Thomas could be on that level. But the one thing that Lad has that those guys don't have is an elite tier quarterback. Like Justin Herbert, what you said, the thing with the touchdowns, 7 touchdowns, and maybe touchdowns fluctuates year to year, but that could go up just because Justin Herbert can throw. Like we've already seen him throw. I believe, I don't know if he's gone to 40. He definitely has hit over 30 touchdowns in a season. I'm going to look that up right now, but we know like how good Justin Herbert is.
It was a different offense under that versus like Harbaugh. Harbaugh now, obviously runs a different offense,
and that's. But he already finishes a top 12 wide receiver already. I would say last year that offense was already a very run heavy offense, or a very not a whole lot of passing volume. And then we started to see later in the season when Lad really started to take off later in the year. Justin Herbert 38 touchdowns. So Lad later in the year started to take off and started to stack multiple games of 10, 15, 20 fantasy points, and down the stretch became a guy that some people question that he could be. And I think this year, heading into this year, it only kind of sets up better for him. Yes, they added Trey Harris. Mike Williams comes over. Those are guys that can, move down the field, create space underneath where Lad can work. I just think Lad, I would not be shocked, and maybe it's because they're white, but he becomes Cooper Kupp. Like this is the new Cooper Kupp going forward. I think Lad has a tremendous ceiling that 100%, if he's there in the second round, he's one of my favorite second round targets.
Yeah, I guess for me, I look second round. I also think of like number 1 receivers going in that range. Like you can even get like Marv a couple rounds later. You can get Devontae a couple rounds later. Like, I don't know. I think where you have to take Lad is just an area where I don't really feel comfortable. And you talking about, over AJ Brown. AJ Brown has been like a top 3 to 5 receiver most of his fantasy career, especially since his time with the Eagles. So I'm like, why, when I know I can get that kind of production out of AJ Brown later, why would I take Lad over him? And he's not going over Lad right now currently, but it wouldn't shock me to see that actually happen as the season gets a little bit closer and values start to get pushed up. Another player that I think is right alongside of that, Terry McLaurin. Like he's going a few picks afterward. Mike Evans going a few picks afterward. I would just rather have those guys over Lad McConkey, and I get the upside is there yardage-wise, but to me, maybe I'm tripping, and this could be one of those, maybe Jahan, maybe you tripping, but it feels like the ceiling is just a little bit limited when it comes to Lad McConkey in this offense. I don't know. I this is,
I think
sometimes
tripping.
You can't get off your
take.
I
think you're overthinking this.
I'm not overthinking it. So give me an elite elite season for Lad McConkey. Like, what do you think those numbers look like? Is that 1,500 yards? I'm not there.
Well,
10 touchdowns?
I would say I would probably prefer him more in like a full point PPR league rather than, like a standard scoring. But I would say like where he could potentially be. I mean, he already had 1,100 receiving yards last year, which was top 10 in terms of wide receivers. So if he can grow, which, he was a rookie, I do think that he could push, 1,300 yards, especially if this offense, which I would say they kind of want to open this thing up with some of the additions. They also, like you said, added a running back, but they desperately needed one because maybe they didn't like what they saw. I don't even want to say like what they saw at JK, but they didn't bring him back. So you bring in Omari Hampton, but then you, like I said, you also add Trey Harris and Mike Williams. So you want to open this thing up, and you just know your best player in offense is your quarterback. Like, this is your best guy. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Ladd McConkey be a top 5 wide receiver next year in fantasy football, especially PPR leagues where he's just a target sponge. Like that's he. I don't want to say this. I don't want to say he's going to be Cooper Kupp, but like Cooper Kupp-esque where Kupp is never going to be Jamar Chase. Like Jamar Chase can take a 80-yard screen to the house. Right. Kupp's not going to do that. Kupp's going to rely on value or volume, which Ladd can be because he's, in my opinion, easily the wide receiver 1 here on an offense that I just think will start to open up with their quarterback, with their elite quarterback. So I could see him get to, 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, maybe even more receiving yards on top of like 100 receptions. That's where you could be. So
I don't know. And like I said, I think maybe this is sometimes when I go to evaluate a player, a lot of the things that I like or dislike are hard to let go. Like that's why I think you have players sometimes that you stick with, right? Because you've done your homework on the player, you do the research, and then you're like, okay, if I see it on film and it adds up, cool, I'm right. If I see it on film and it doesn't add up, now I need to figure something out. And I think when it comes to Ladd, I'm like, opportunity, 110 targets, like that's cool. Maybe pushes to 130, but he's not a 150 target guy. He's not necessarily a 100 catch guy. He's not necessarily a 10 catch. He's like Chris Olave to me. Kind of reminds me of like Chris Olave, where they're not going to be like a certain kind of volume, and it feels like that with Ladd McConkey.
You know who he is? I'm going to tell you right now who he is.
Who?
He's Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's a slot receiver who's going to see volume in the slot. Amon-Ra, his first year, 119 targets, 900 receiving yards.
He's not
90 receptions.
He
is Amon-Ra St. Brown.
He ain't St. Brown.
Listen, you miss out on. I'm just gonna say this is definitely going to be one take that you're going to be wrong with 100%.
I hope so.
We'll bring this up. I hope you change your mind. We still have a long time till the preseason's over. Hopefully you change your mind and you get on, because this is a guy that you don't want to miss out on. I will say he goes around some really good players like Jonathan Taylor. I like in that range. Like we talked about this last time. That second round, the beginning of the second round, even through, halfway through the second round, there's a lot of really good guys to have this year. So he's a guy that I really like.
Ladd McConkey is much. I might change my tune. I might say I like. He will not be on my roster in the second round. I can 1,000% say that. I'm not taking Ladd McConkey in the second round, bro, with confidence.